If we back on the website and click on this, you can see at here, each chat have different path, and this is the same as the chat collections. You can see if this is start from JN. You can see here it is also start at JN. And now we want to server-side render the chat. So we go to the detail page, and which is the id.js, and right before the material UI we go to create the getServerSideProps, and then it get the ID from here, and this is because we named it as square bracket ID, so we have to use .id, and then we go to select the dot that inside the chat collections with the ID JN. For example, at here we select this one, and then this has the users. And since this is a complex data, so this is better to use JSON.stringify. And the ID we also returned on the top, so we go to here, we paste the chat and also the ID on the top, and then we pass the chat to the chat content. So we go to the chat content. Since we want to display the friend details, so we create a state called friend, and we are going to pass the chat that we just passed at the previous page, because we just passed this as chat. So we have to destructure the chat, and later we also want to use the ID, and we name it as chat ID, which is the ID that get from here. So we go back to the chat and we destructure the chat ID. And now we are going to use the use effect, and inside the chat path, actually this is the same as this one. We have the users, and we are going to check if the user's length is greater than 0. And we delete this console log, and then we use the getFriends function to get the friend data, and we already used this before, so we don't spend time on explaining these functions, but we have to import from the utility folders. And now we have the friend data, and we also depends on the chat ID, so every time it click on different person is to change the profile picture. And now we have the friend data, and it said we haven't imported doc, so we go to the ID and we have to import the dot and import the get dot. And go back to the chat content, and here we want to set this is the friend dot display name, and we also have the source equal to friend dot photo URL. We refresh the page. It said the DB haven't been imported, so we go to the ID and import the DB from the config file. And also we have to import the use date and also the use effect. Now we can see it shows the profile picture and also the name. So if we click on the other, it also changed the profile picture and also the name. So I want to show you that if you do not add this as dependency, so every time you click on each one, it also shows the same picture because it just load one time. So if we depend on the change of the ID, so every time it detects the change of the ID, this one, it will change the profile picture and also the name.